Let's talk about money. Specifically, money from the government showing up in your bank account. In a shaky economy where families are struggling with rising costs, the idea of another stimulus check isn't just nice. For millions, it's a potential lifeline. We've been here before. We saw checks under Bush, twice under Trump, and again under Biden. Each time, these payments were a response to a crisis meant to pump cash into the economy and give families some breathing room. And now that conversation is back. It's all centered on a huge new proposal that could send thousands of dollars to millions of Americans. But this time, the money is supposed to come from a different place. The politics have shifted, and the path to actually getting a check is full of twists and turns. This isn't just another stimulus package, it's a whole new way of thinking about how the government can use its financial power. So, when a major political figure promises to send out checks, people listen. But is it a promise that can be kept? That's the big question we're going to explore today. We'll peel back the layers, look at the fine print, and give you the real story. Did former President Trump just promise a new $2,000 stimulus check for most Americans? He recently announced a new plan to use money from tariffs to send you a significant payment. But this is far from a done deal, and the biggest obstacle is Congress. So, could this money actually land in your bank account? We're breaking down if and when it could happen, and the details might just surprise you. First, let's look at what was actually said. The announcement came straight from former President Donald Trump in his usual direct to the people style. In a post on his Truth Social platform, he made a bold promise to send at least $2,000 a person to most Americans, making sure to note this would not include high income people. This wasn't some quiet policy memo. It was a public declaration designed to get everyone's attention. Trump didn't call it a traditional stimulus, but a tariff dividend. The idea sounds simple. The government is collecting a ton of money from taxes on imported goods, and he thinks that money should be given back to the American people. In his posts, Trump didn't just announce the plan, he passionately defended the tariff policy that would pay for it. He called people against tariffs fools and linked the policy to a strong economy and job growth, claiming that businesses are pouring into the USA only because of tariffs. He argued this revenue, which he claimed was in the trillions of dollars, could fund these dividend payments and also start paying down the massive national debt, which he cited as being $37 trillion. This wasn't his first time floating the idea. In an earlier interview, he mentioned a similar concept of a distribution to the people, possibly between $1,000 and $2,000. This latest announcement, however, was much more specific about the amount, at least $2,000, and way more forceful. It was presented as a key part of his economic vision. When a White House official was asked about it, they didn't dismiss it. Instead, they reinforced the administration's stance on tariffs, saying they are resetting global commerce, and they're also raising billions in revenue for the federal government. The official added, "The administration is committed to putting this money to good use for the American people." This sounds supportive, but it's carefully worded. It adds some official weight to the idea, but stops well short of confirming that checks are actually on the way. The announcement was a powerful piece of political messaging, but a presidential promise is just the first step on a very long and complicated road. So, what exactly is this tariff dividend? The name itself is clever. It's not a stimulus check like the COVID payments, which were meant to jumpstart a failing economy. By calling it a dividend, the proposal frames the money as your rightful share of the country's profits. It's a powerful idea that shifts the conversation from a government handout to an earned return. Who would get this $2,000? According to Trump's post, the checks would go to everyone, but not to high-income people. The problem is that high income cutoff hasn't been defined at all. If we look at past stimulus programs for clues, income limits have varied. For example, during the 2020 CARES Act, payments started phasing out for individuals earning over $75,000. A similar proposal from Senator Josh Hawley also used these income levels. If we assume a similar cutoff, one analysis estimates about 150 million adults would qualify. If the plan also includes money for kids, like some past programs did, that number would be even higher. For a family of four getting $2,000 each, that's an $8,000 payment. A truly life-changing amount of money for many. But here's where it gets complicated. Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent, a key member of the economic team, offered a very different take. When asked about the $2,000 checks, he said he hadn't spoken with Trump about that specific plan. He then said the $2,000 dividend could come in lots of forms in lots of ways. He suggested it might not be a direct check at all, but could instead be delivered through proposed tax cuts, like making tips, overtime, and Social Security benefits tax free. This is a huge difference. For most people, a $2,000 check in the bank is not the same as a tax deduction they might see months later. Besant's comments throw a major wrench into the works. Is this a plan for direct payments, like Trump said? Or is it just a rebranding of tax policy ideas? The president says one thing, his Treasury Secretary suggests another. This confusion shows that the plan is more of a concept than a fully formed policy, and the form it could take is very much up in the air. This whole $2,000 dividend idea hangs on one thing: tariffs. So, what are they? And is there really enough money to pay for all this? A tariff is just a tax on imported goods. When a US company buys something from another country, the US government adds a tax. The company importing the goods is the one that pays this tax. There's a common myth that the country selling the goods, like China, pays the tariff. That's not how it works. The cost falls on the American company, which then usually passes that cost on to you, the consumer, through higher prices. Most economic studies show that the cost is almost entirely passed on to American consumers and businesses. So in reality, tariffs often act like a hidden tax on Americans. The dividend is pitched as a way to fix this. If you're paying more for goods, the government will give you that money back. So how much money are we talking about? The numbers are huge. For fiscal year 2025, the government reported a total tariff revenue of about $195 billion. This is a massive increase thanks to the administration's aggressive trade policies. Some projections even estimate tariffs could raise $2.6 trillion over the next decade. Now, for the big question, is this enough for $2,000 checks? Let's do the math. If 150 million adults qualify, $2,000 checks would cost around $300 billion. That doesn't even include payments for children. The tariff revenue last year was $195 billion. You see the problem? The cost of the checks is way more than the money coming in from tariffs in a single year. This points to a few possibilities. The program might need to be funded with several years of tariff money, the eligibility rules could be much tighter, or the check amount could be lower than $2,000. This financial gap is a major red flag, suggesting the numbers as they've been presented just don't add up. Now we get to the biggest roadblock between this proposal and your bank account: the United States Congress. A president can't just decide to create a huge new spending program on their own. The US Constitution is crystal clear. Congress has the power of the purse. This means only Congress can authorize spending money from the US Treasury. For these $2,000 checks to be real, a bill would have to be written, passed by both the House and the Senate, and then signed by the president. There are no shortcuts. Take a look at a recent example. Republican Senator Josh Hawley introduced a bill in July 2025 called the American Worker Rebate Act. It proposed sending out rebate checks funded by tariffs, a nearly identical idea, just for a smaller amount. So what happened to it? As of November 2025, it has gone absolutely nowhere. It was sent to a committee and has been collecting dust ever since, with no co-sponsors and no real progress. This shows you the political reality. Even an idea from a senator in the president's own party is stalled. Why? Because the Republican Party itself is split. Some, like Hawley, love the idea, but many conservatives are strongly against it. They argue any extra revenue should go to paying down the national debt, which has now passed $38 trillion. Some Republican senators have even called the idea insane, and that's before you even consider the Democrats. To pass the Senate, a bill like this would probably need 60 votes, meaning it needs bipartisan support. It's hard to imagine Democrats lining up to support a centerpiece of Trump's economic agenda without a major fight or huge concessions. The political climate is incredibly polarized. The idea that a $300+ billion spending bill could just sail through Congress is not realistic. Without Congress, the $2,000 checks are just a talking point. As if getting through Congress wasn't hard enough, there's another massive obstacle: a legal battle that has gone all the way to the Supreme Court. This lawsuit doesn't just threaten the $2,000 checks, it threatens the very tariffs that are supposed to pay for them. The issue is the legal authority the president has used to impose these tariffs. The administration has been using a 1977 law called the International Emergency Economic Powers Act, or IEEPA. This law lets the president declare a national emergency to deal with an unusual and extraordinary foreign threat. Historically, it's been used for sanctions, not for setting broad tariffs on the entire economy. Small businesses and states challenge this use of IEPA in court. arguing the president overstepped his authority and that only Congress can create taxes, which is what tariffs are. And so far, the lower courts have agreed with them, ruling that the president's authority under IEPA doesn't extend to imposing these kinds of tariffs. The case was appealed, and the Supreme Court heard arguments in early November 2025. During those arguments, justices from across the political spectrum seemed skeptical of the administration's argument. They questioned whether Congress ever intended for this law to be used to create massive tariff programs, noting that the word tariff isn't even in the law. The stakes here are huge. If the court sides with the administration, it would expand presidential power. But if the court rules against the administration, the impact on this dividend plan would be catastrophic. One estimate suggests the government might have to refund roughly $90 billion in tariffs already collected. It would also slash future tariff revenue by more than half. This would blow a massive hole in the funding for the proposed checks, making the already shaky math completely impossible. The entire tariff dividend plan is built on money that is sitting on a very shaky legal foundation, and a single court decision could make it all collapse. Let's pretend for a second that all those hurdles disappear. Congress passes a bill, the Supreme Court gives the green light, and the checks are ready to go. Is it all good news? Not exactly. This is where we run into the catch, the potential economic fallout. The biggest worry is inflation. The basic idea is simple. If you suddenly give millions of people more money to spend, but there aren't more things to buy, prices go up. Demand outstrips supply. We saw a version of this after the COVID stimulus packages. Critics of the $2,000 checks argue we'd just be making the same mistake and that another surge in prices would eat away at the value of the checks themselves. The second issue is the national debt. Trump has claimed tariff money could both pay for dividends and start paying down the nearly $38 trillion national debt. But as we saw, the math doesn't work. The checks alone could cost more than the annual tariff revenue. You can't spend the same dollar twice. Many conservative lawmakers argue every cent from tariffs should go to debt reduction, period. Then there's the argument about the tariffs themselves. As we discussed, most economists agree the cost of tariffs is paid by Americans through higher prices. From that view, a tariff rebate isn't a bonus. It's just giving people back a piece of the extra money they already spent. It's a circular payment, not a net gain. Finally, and this is important, there's the official position of the IRS. As of right now, the IRS is being very clear. There are no new federal stimulus checks scheduled for distribution. They've even warned people about scams spreading on social media. This is a crucial reality check from the very agency that would send the money. This mix of inflation risk, debt concerns, and an official denial from the IRS is the big catch behind the promise of a $2,000 check. So, back to the big question. Did Trump just announce a $2,000 stimulus check? The answer is sort of. Yes, a bold announcement was made for a $2,000 tariff dividend. But an announcement isn't a law. It isn't a guarantee. And it definitely isn't money in your bank. Right now, this is just a proposal facing a mountain of obstacles. First, the math is questionable. Second, the entire funding plan is tied up in a Supreme Court case that could gut it. And most importantly, it faces the massive wall of Congress. No checks can go out unless a bill passes both the House and the Senate, and a similar bill is currently going nowhere. On top of all that, the president's own Treasury Secretary has hinted the dividend might just be tax cuts, not a direct check. So, will this happen? As it stands, it's not looking likely. It's a powerful political promise, but it is not a concrete policy. The IRS has confirmed no new payments are authorized. For this to change, the Supreme Court would have to rule in the administration's favor, and then Congress would have to pass a specific law. Both of those are very big ifs. This is a developing story, and things could change fast. The only way to know what's really going on is to stay informed. That's why I hope you'll subscribe for more updates on this and other financial news. We cut through the noise to bring you the facts. Now, I want to hear from you. What do you think about this proposal? Should tariff money be used for checks to pay down the debt or something else? What would $2,000 mean for you? Let me know in the comments below. Your perspective matters. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.